Sophia had always heard about the luxury and allure of massages, but she had never been brave enough to explore the more intimate services some spas offered. Life had been stressful lately, and she yearned for something to help her unwind. That's what led her to Serenity Spa, a renowned center that promised to make its clients feel like royalty. However, today, Sophia wasn't here for the usual back or foot rub. She'd booked an appointment for something more personal, a breast massage. Nervous but intrigued, she stepped through the doors of the spa. The air smelled of lavender and vanilla, and a soft, calming melody played in the background. It was exactly what she needed, yet her heart raced. Her hands trembled slightly as she approached the reception desk. "Welcome to Serenity Spa. How may I assist you today?" The receptionist greeted her warmly. Sophia's voice was barely a whisper. "I have an appointment with Ethan." The receptionist smiled knowingly, nodding as if this was completely routine. "Ah, of course, Ethan is one of our best. He'll take very good care of you." Sophia's heart skipped at the thought. She had heard about Ethan from a friend who said his hands were nothing short of magical. Still, there was something about the idea of a man touching her in such an intimate way that made her pulse quicken. Not just with nerves, but with a kind of excitement she hadn't expected. After a brief wait, Ethan appeared. He was taller than she had imagined, with a relaxed confidence that put her at ease almost immediately. His sandy brown hair fell just above his eyes, and his smile was warm, yet professional. There was something about him, though, something in the way his gaze lingered just a fraction longer than necessary. "Hi, Sophia," he greeted her in a low, soothing voice. "I'm Ethan. I'll be taking care of you today. Follow me." As they walked down the softly lit hallway, her mind raced with anticipation. The room they entered was warm and inviting, bathed in a soft, amber glow from candles placed around the room. The bed was neatly made, draped in plush towels. Everything about the space whispered comfort. "I can tell you're a little nervous," Ethan said, his voice like velvet breaking through her thoughts. "It's normal to feel that way the first time, but I promise my job is to make you feel comfortable and relaxed." She nodded, her lips curving into a small smile. "Thank you." Ethan stepped closer, his presence comforting yet undeniably magnetic. "You can undress and lie down under the towel, and we'll get started. Just take a deep breath. It's all about you today." Once he stepped out, Sophia disrobed, her heart pounding louder than it had been before. She laid down on the soft massage table, the plush towel covering her bare skin. The anticipation was almost unbearable, but there was something thrilling in the unknown. She closed her eyes, trying to focus on the sound of her own breath. A few moments later, Ethan returned, his steps quiet as he approached the table. She felt the warmth of his presence before she heard him. "We'll start slow," he whispered, his hands hovering just above her. The tension in the room was palpable, the air thick with an unspoken connection. Ethan's hands were warm as they gently touched her shoulders, his fingers working in slow, rhythmic circles. His touch was professional, but there was a tenderness to it that made her relax almost immediately. She let out a soft sigh, her body easing into the rhythm of his touch. "Is the pressure okay?" he asked softly, his voice laced with concern. "Perfect," she breathed, her voice barely audible. Ethan's hands moved lower, tracing delicate lines along her sides, skimming the edge of the towel that draped her. His fingers were gentle yet firm, guiding her body into a state of relaxation she hadn't felt in years. As his touch moved closer to her chest, her heart began to race again. But not out of nerves this time. He paused, his fingers just grazing the edge of her breasts, waiting for her permission. "Are you ready?" Sophia's breath hitched. "Yes," she whispered, feeling a flutter of excitement. Gently, Ethan folded the towel back, exposing her breasts to the warm air of the room. His hands moved with a reverence she hadn't expected, cupping her softly before his fingers began to knead and massage with expert precision. His touch was firm yet tender, his fingers moving in slow, rhythmic circles that sent waves of warmth radiating through her. Sophia felt her body respond to him, her breathing deepening as the tension melted away under his skilled hands. But there was more to it than just the physical relief. There was an intimacy in the way he touched her, a connection that seemed to pulse between them, as if his hands were not just soothing her body but awakening something deep within her. Ethan's breath was steady, controlled, but every now and then she could feel his fingertips linger, his touch becoming softer, more intimate. The boundaries between relaxation and something deeper began to blur, and Sophia found herself lost in the sensation. Her skin felt alive under his touch, every stroke sending a ripple of pleasure through her. "Ethan," she whispered, not even sure what she was asking for, but knowing she didn't want this feeling to stop. His hands paused for just a moment, as if he was gauging her response. Then slowly he leaned down, his breath warm against her ear. "How do you feel?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper, full of tenderness and something more. "Good," she breathed, her pulse quickening. "More than good." Ethan's lips curved into a small smile, and without a word, he continued. This time his hands moved with more purpose, his touch more deliberate. His fingers traced the curves of her breasts, exploring every inch of her with a gentleness that left her breathless. He was in no hurry, taking his time to make sure every touch, every stroke, made her feel cherished, adored. Sophia's eyes fluttered open for just a moment, catching a glimpse of Ethan's face. His gaze was focused, intent on her, but there was something more in his eyes, something that made her heart race even faster. She felt a deep connection to him, a pull that went beyond the physical. The massage lasted longer than she had anticipated, but Sophia didn't mind. She was lost in the sensation of his hands, the warmth of his touch, the way he seemed to know exactly what she needed without her saying a word. When Ethan finally finished, his hands lingered on her skin for just a moment longer, his touch soft and full of unspoken affection. He pulled the towel back over her, covering her with the same tenderness he had shown throughout the massage. "Take your time," he whispered, his breath warm against her ear. "You deserve to feel this relaxed." Sophia lay there for a moment, her body humming with the afterglow of his touch. She didn't want to move, didn't want to break the spell that had been cast between them. But when she finally sat up, her eyes met Ethan's, and for a moment, they simply stared at each other. There was no need for words. Everything they had felt, everything they had shared, was written in the air between them. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice full of emotion. Ethan smiled softly, his eyes warm and full of something deeper than just gratitude. "Anytime." As Sophia left the spa that day, her heart raced, not just from the experience, but from the undeniable connection she had felt with Ethan. It was more than just a massage. It was the beginning of something new, something thrilling. And she knew, without a doubt, that this wouldn't be the last time she found herself in his capable, tender hands. As Sophia left the spa, her thoughts were consumed by the memory of Ethan's hands, his touch, and the way her body had responded to him. She found herself thinking about him long after she had left the spa, replaying every moment, every sensation in her mind. She had never felt anything like it before, and as much as she tried to shake it off, she couldn't deny the deep attraction she now felt for him. A week later, Sophia found herself back at Serenity Spa. This time, she didn't feel the same nervousness as before. Instead, there was an eagerness, a subtle anticipation humming beneath her skin. She had booked another session with Ethan, and just the thought of seeing him again made her heart race. When she arrived, Ethan greeted her with that same warm smile, his eyes lingering on her a little longer than before. "Welcome back, Sophia," he said softly, his voice as soothing as ever. "Shall we begin?" This time, the air between them was charged with something unspoken, a deeper connection that had only grown since their last encounter. As they entered the private room, Sophia could feel the tension building. The candles flickered softly, casting a warm, golden light that seemed to envelop them both in its glow. She undressed slowly, her movements deliberate, knowing that Ethan would soon return. Lying on the massage table, She covered herself with the towel, her heart pounding with anticipation. When Ethan entered, the atmosphere shifted, becoming more intimate, more charged. He approached the table, his presence alone making her as Ethan's hands touched her shoulders, just as they had before, but this time there was a subtle difference. His fingers lingered longer, his touch more personal, more deliberate. He worked his way down her back, his hands firm yet tender, soothing her muscles while igniting a slow-burning desire within her. As his hands moved lower, Ethan leaned closer, his breath warm against her neck. "You feel tense here," he whispered, his voice sending shivers down her spine. "Let me help you relax." Sophia's breath hitched as his hands slid beneath the towel, gently massaging her hips and lower back. His touch was intimate, but not rushed. He was taking his time, making sure every movement was purposeful, every touch designed to make her feel more relaxed and more aware of him. When he reached her sides, his fingers grazed the edge of her breasts, and Sophia's breath caught in her throat. Ethan paused for a moment, his hands hovering just above her skin. "Do you want me to continue?" he asked, his voice low, almost a whisper. "Yes," she breathed, her voice filled with anticipation. Ethan gently removed the towel, exposing her completely. His hands were warm as they cupped her breasts, his touch soft yet firm as he began to massage her. His fingers moved in slow, circular motions, teasing and kneading in a way that made her body hum with pleasure. Each stroke sent waves of heat coursing through her, building a tension deep inside her that she hadn't felt in years. As Ethan continued, his hands became more confident, his touch more intimate. Sophia's breathing grew heavier, her body responding to every stroke, every caress. She could feel the warmth of his breath as he leaned closer, his lips brushing against the curve of her neck. The first kiss was soft, barely more than a whisper, but it sent a jolt of electricity through her. Sophia gasped, her body arching into his touch as his lips moved lower, tracing a path along her shoulder and down her back. His kisses were slow, deliberate, each one leaving a trail of heat in its wake. "I've wanted to kiss you like this," Ethan murmured against her skin, his voice thick with desire. "Since the first time you came here." Sophia turned slightly, her eyes meeting his. The intensity in his gaze made her heart race, and without thinking, she reached up, pulling him closer until their lips met in a deep, hungry kiss. Ethan's kiss was slow at first, his lips exploring hers with a tenderness that made her melt. But as their kiss deepened, the passion between them grew. His hands, still massaging her, moved with more urgency, his touch sending waves of pleasure through her body. Sophia moaned softly against his lips, her hands gripping his arms as she pulled him closer. Ethan broke the kiss, his forehead resting against hers as he caught his breath. "Are you sure you want this?" he asked, his voice thick with need. "Yes," she whispered, her voice breathless. "I want you." With that, Ethan's hands moved lower, caressing her body with a tenderness that made her heart ache. He kissed her again, this time more deeply, more passionately, his lips claiming hers as his hands explored her curves. Every touch, every kiss, sent her spiraling deeper into a world of pleasure, her body completely at his mercy. Sophia's hands found their way to his chest, her fingers tracing the lines of his muscles as she pulled him even closer. She could feel the heat of his body against hers, the way his breath hitched as their kisses grew more fervent. Ethan gently guided her onto her back, his hands never leaving her skin. He kissed her neck, her collarbone, each kiss sending sparks of electricity through her. His lips moved lower, trailing down her body as his hands continued their exploration. Every touch was soft yet purposeful, every kiss filled with a desire that mirrored her own. As his lips found her breasts, Sophia gasped, her fingers tangling in his hair as he kissed and teased her sensitive skin. His mouth was hot against her, his tongue tracing circles around her nipples, teasing her until she was breathless. His hands continued to massage her, his touch slow and deliberate, sending waves of pleasure through her body. The room was filled with the sound of their ragged breaths, the soft moans escaping from Sophia's lips as Ethan's hands and lips worked in perfect harmony. Every touch, every kiss made her feel more alive, more desired than she ever had before. Ethan pulled away for a moment, his eyes dark with desire as he looked down at her. "You're beautiful," he whispered, his voice filled with awe. Sophia smiled, her heart swelling at his words. She reached up, pulling him back down into a kiss that was full of passion, full of the connection they had built over their time together. As their bodies moved in sync, the intensity between them grew, and they became lost in the moment, their desire for each other overwhelming everything else. Hours seemed to melt away as they explored each other, their hands and lips discovering new ways to ignite the fire that had been building between them since the moment they met. Every kiss, every touch brought them closer together, their connection deepening with every passing second. Finally, as the night wore on, they lay together, their bodies entwined, the warmth of their embrace soothing and comforting. Sophia rested her head against Ethan's chest, her fingers tracing soft patterns on his skin as they lay in the aftermath of their passion. "I never expected this," she whispered, her voice soft, filled with emotion. "Neither did I," Ethan replied, his voice equally tender. "But I'm glad it happened." Sophia smiled, feeling a sense of contentment she hadn't felt in years. She had come to the spa seeking relaxation, but what she had found was something much deeper, something much more meaningful. In Ethan's arms, she felt cherished, adored, and completely alive. As they drifted off to sleep, wrapped in each other's warmth, Sophia knew that this was just the beginning of something beautiful, something that went beyond the physical, something that was rooted in a deep, undeniable connection. And for the first time in a long time, she felt whole.